kind of like inertia or something.
God, not like but they have osteoporosis.
Make sure you have a copy of the driver's handbook that you can buy at Canadian Tire sells them. Make sure you have that when you do your Class F test. The written test will be all the stuff that's in there. You'll need the bus one, all right, and you'll need the road signs because the test includes that stuff. For your Class F driver's license, the Act says, the Highway Traffic Act says that no person shall drive a vehicle if they're not licensed for that class of vehicle. Who's the exception?
TZ?
There is no exception.
There is an exception.
Higher? God. God.
Police.
Oh.
Police can drive any class of vehicle during the course of their duties. So a police officer that only has a G could go and climb behind the wheel of an AZ and pull it off the highway. So police can drive your ambulance. It's not always recommended because they tend to drive the ambulance like a police car, which causes kind of a problem when you're the monkey in the back and you get thrown around. That's why they have that net, right? We call that the nurse catcher. When the nurses are, and the patient is sitting in the back, and then you slam on the brakes, and then she goes flying, and that kind of stops her from ending up in the front. When they end up in the front, they're really pissed off at us, so we want to make them stay in the back and be mad. Yeah, but police can. So, can a firefighter drive your ambulance? What license do they
Don't they
have?
have TZ? They have the F license.
That's actually a good question. So they have
Yeah,
a
Mike.
Class Z. Z is the air brake endorsement. Canada's, Ontario is the only place that really has that fucking shit.
That's like the shorter truck.
So it's up to so many tons, so many axles. A is the ultimate. A, you can drive A and B with the A. You can't drive B, so you have to have an A and a B. The B is bus, coach bus. But a firefighter cannot drive your ambulance. Okay, because D does not class that's not class as an F. Okay, and in particular, the city of Toronto does not allow it. They prohibit firefighters from driving the ambulance. So if a firefighter was a paramedic, they would have to have a DFZ. Okay? And if that same firefighter has a motorcycle, it would be DFMZ on their license. So the goal is to get as many letters on your driver's license as you possibly can.
Catch them all.
And then that way you can drive anything.
Or be a cop.
Or, yeah, just that. Why do you want to be a police officer? Because I can fucking drive whatever I want. Good enough? They'll probably go uniform fittings down the hall. So Class F, as I said, is the short bus, up to 24 passenger capacity bus, and then ambulances. Somehow the two got put together. They're relatively the same sort of size. The ambulance is probably a little bit heavier. Okay. The bus is defined as any vehicle designed for carrying 10 or more passengers and used for the transportation of persons. So when you go for your Class F test, they will ask bus type questions of you during your test, so both the road test and the written test. Things like, how do you inspect a stanchion? You'll go, what's a stanchion, Dave? And it's like, stay tuned in semester 2 and I will tell you. Because in semester 2, we go over how to inspect the ambulance for a pre-trip inspection, and that's when that'll come up. So that when you go to your Class F to the drive center, those assholes that are trying to fail you, I give you so that you don't fail. But they will try, and every so often they get somebody, because they come up with something new that we don't know yet. And anyways, so, don't get me started on the drugs. Ambulance. In the Ambulance Act, defined as a cardiac arrest vehicle operated under the authority of the hospital, and it's also defined in the ambulance that any ambulance vehicle that's designed to carry elderly persons. Okay, so the Ambulance Act itself is provincial, and the provincial government regulates how an ambulance is designed, so what it must be like, not the manufacturer. So they don't say it must be a Crestline with a Chevy body mounted, right? It doesn't, they don't say that. It will say it needs to be equipped with these things and have the patient compartment so designed, because if the ministry did that, the services would go, you have to buy it for us. Whereas this way, you buy the vehicle that complies with our standard. Okay? So until recently, the response units weren't really listed in the Highway Traffic Act or in the Ambulance Act, but basically a response unit can be one of these SUVs like this, that is a vehicle within the meaning of the act operated by an ambulance service, but is other than an ambulance. It could be an ambulance, but generally it's an SUV that is designated as a response unit. And it's used to provide emergency response services. It had to make this exemption, otherwise supervisor vehicles and emergency response units could not run emergency calls because they were not covered under the Highway Traffic Act to do so. So once they said this, then there's things called ERU, Emergency Response Unit. Halton has FRU, First Response Unit, which can be your partner is off sick, but you're working and they don't have anybody for you to work with, and so they may ask you to take the ambulance and do first response. Okay, so you would go on calls by yourself. By yourself and alone. And a single. And the only problem with that is you're still supposed to be called a paramedic, but in that case you're more like a one-medic or unimedic. That's why they call it paramedics, because there's two of you. You didn't know that, did you?
Paramedics.
Paramedics, very bad,
Oh.
see? The light just went on, now I finally get it. Yeah, uni, like a Unabomber. Yeah, remember that? Yeah. In Toronto has PCP response units and ACP response units. Not all services do that. They don't believe that ACP should be on a response unit. I would disagree with that. Maybe that could be one of our debate questions. But anyways, they call them PRU, and if it was an ACP response unit, it would be ARU. ACP response, PRU, PCP response. Emergency vehicle, like you didn't know, is an ambulance, fire department vehicle, police department vehicle, or public utility emergency vehicle. I like how this one's very specific, that it says ambulance, but these other two are any department vehicle. So if the police happen to rent a Toyota Camry and put two police officers in it, it becomes a police department vehicle. Right? And you'll see the OPP sometimes out there doing traffic enforcement from like a Toyota Camry or some little piece of shit car that you'll go blasting by and give it the finger, and then next thing you know you're getting pulled over for speeding, right? Because they like to do shit like that, except for I just run them off the, anyways, yes.
So, emergency response vehicle is different from emergency vehicle.
No, it's the same.
Oh, same.
It had to be delineated though, because it used to only, have ambulance, right? Doesn't say, right, because that thing is not an ambulance, right? Here, it says ambulance, and that's why ERU is separate. Because up until then, it was actually illegal to operate, response units, and that was like, we're talking 30 years ago. Right? That was a long time ago. That's the way things work. So also in here, emergency vehicle, conservation officer, fisheries officer, which is the same as these guys, provincial parks, mine rescue, and anything that they're doing as part of their employment. Okay. Did you know, this is a little trivia, that conservation officers have more rights of search and seizure than police do? If they think that you are poaching fish or jacking deer or hunting illegally, they just have to suspect that you're doing it, and they can search your vehicle. Whereas police have to have cause to search your vehicle. Right? So enforcing conservation and wildlife enforcement is a big deal. So commercial motor vehicle, okay, does not include a commercial vehicle other than a bus having a gross weight of more than 4,500 kilograms. An ambulance, a fire apparatus, a hearse. I like this one. Casket wagon. A mobile crane or home vehicle commonly known as a tow truck. So the weight here dictates whether the vehicle will be classified as a commercial vehicle. And so the thing outside, parked outside, is 8,600 pounds. So it has to have a CVOR sticker. It's a commercial vehicle. CVOR stands for Commercial Vehicle Operations Certificate, and it's basically a yearly safety that has to be completed, and then a yellow sticker goes on the front windshield just below the driver's side there. Emergency warning lights are listed in the Highway Traffic Act, and only up until this point here, when this was written, only police can have the blue and red, but they've given it to ambulances. Does anybody know why it's red, white, and blue now, not just red, white flashing lights?
Drunk drivers are drawn to the red lights, so the likelihood of them crashing into an ambulance is
Did you all hear that?
No.
So what happens is, and it was studied in the United States, the red and white flashing lights draw the drunk drivers towards them for some reason. I guess they think they're taillights, and it causes accidents, so it was for safety. The police adopted it first up here, and now you will see ambulances that have one flashing blue on the back, one on the front, and then one on either side now. And that's to break up that red and white pattern. And it improves safety, because if you've been driving at night, as you're approaching the scene of an accident, you can actually see that there's emergency vehicles up there now, because you see red, white, and then that blue up there. So that's what that is for. But specifically, forward flashing lights are illegal to have on anything but an emergency vehicle. So you cannot equip your car with emergency lights. And it specifically says in the Highway Traffic Act, forward flashing, red, right, white. And that's why when you turn on your hazards, the front ones aren't red, they're orange, the rear ones are red. Because you can have rear flashing red, but not front. So some areas and communities in the province have volunteer paid firefighters and volunteer medical responders. More often you'll find, if you go into smaller communities in Northern Ontario, they have volunteer paid firefighters. So they don't have the tax base to pay for a full-time service. And so they'll have people that are part-time volunteer firefighters, and they carry a pager with them, and if a call comes in, their pagers will go off, and they would respond from wherever they are. Sometimes they are allowed to go even from if they're at work. Their employer will allow them to leave work and go on a call. So they will either drive directly to the scene of the call, and they'll have this green flashing light on their dash that denotes them as responding to a call. They still have to follow the rules of the road, but they have an exemption for being able to get there quickly. So the way it would work is somebody would go to the fire hall and get the fire truck, bring it to the scene, and then the rest of them would show up in their cars. So if you do happen to end up getting a job in the northern parts of Ontario, in these communities, that you may find that as you arrive, there's a whole bunch of personal vehicles parked out front near the call with these green flashing lights on there. Don't see it very often. You have to be in certain areas of the province to find that. Down here, it's all full-time service, fire and EMS, so there's not a lot of this, but they are out there. I think I've seen in about 5 years, I've seen one. But you have to be at the right place at the right time. It's also illegal to have a siren, which kind of upsets me because now I just have to roll down the window and scream out the window. Right? No vehicle other than an ambulance, fire, police department vehicle, utility vehicle, or vehicle operated by the ministry shall be equipped by a siren or horn, or device producing a sound which so resembles that produced by a siren or horn, as to deceive or confuse. I like that somebody out there went, well, it isn't a siren, but it sounds like one, so it'll be okay, right? So then they have to write that clause in there because somebody must have done something. And it wasn't me. That rule was not made because of me. There's other rules that were, not that one. So handheld devices, you know that you're not supposed to have a cell phone in your hand while driving. Even those people I see that they put it on speakerphone and they drive it with their hand, it's like, no, you're not even allowed to have it in your fucking hand. Okay? You can't even be at a red light and have it in your hand. Well, if you're driving an ambulance or a department fire or a police vehicle, you can use your cell phone, but it has to be you're conducting business of ambulance nature. You can't be calling your boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, or relatives, your mom. Mom, you didn't pay. You forgot to make my lunch today. Can you wash my uniform? Right? You can't do that. I know.
I can't like surf on Instagram while
I'm driving. Yeah. You go on Instagram, I'm like, look at that, oh wow! Yeah. I unfollowed that person and they still keep showing up. Inspection reports. You're required to complete an inspection, a pre-trip inspection report for your vehicle at the start of every shift. So the pre-trip inspection report is not the equipment inspection, the patient care stuff. That's a different inspection report. This inspection report is the same thing as the pre-trip inspection you're going to be learning in semester 2 that you have to do for your class F. So it's a safety check of the equipment on the like the wheels and the body and the engine compartment and the interior driving controls, etc., lighting, whatnot of the ambulance. You're supposed to do that. And if you get pulled over by the ministry, MTO, because it's a commercial vehicle, they can ask to see the report. So in Toronto in particular, they do it electronically now. It's done on the same tablet that you would use to complete your ACR, speaking of documentation. That has to be done. You are allowed to speed in an ambulance. So it doesn't say how fast is too fast. That's a defensive driving thing. The typical defensive driving is 20 kilometers above the posted speed limit. And then there's always a but, right? Everyone has a but, so does everything else. Just one has two T's and the other one doesn't. So the but on this one is 20 kilometers above the speed limit, and there's those fucking municipal photo radar things out there. And if you are 20 kilometers above the speed limit and that thing will take your picture, you're getting a ticket. Even if you're doing an emergency call. So the city of Toronto doesn't give a shit. And that's one of the debate topics, so we'll see what people say about it next week. But you are allowed, when responding to or transporting a patient to the hospital in an emergency situation, to exceed the speed limit. Okay, so you have certain responsibilities to follow still the rules of the road and not cause accidents or be in accidents, but you are allowed to exceed the speed limit.
So what happens when we get a ticket? Like, do we have to pay it, or is it?
The red light, the speed cameras,
Yeah,
they want you to pay.
yeah.
There's a paramedic in the city that is a response unit paramedic and has racked up $1,800 worth of the speed cameras. In response unit.
Yeah, like-
There was a case that the paramedics really got all upset about. That the crews were they had done a pediatric cardiac arrest, and they were transporting the kid to the hospital. And the two ambulances that went both got right down the street from the house, right? Took their picture, and then they came in and said, "Who was driving there? Fucking pay it," right? Anyways, yep.
I'm assuming you don't get points, but take it up.
No one gets points for cameras because they can't prove who was behind the wheel.
Sweet.
So, red light camera. They'll ding you for red light cameras as well. And the police can get suspended for running the red lights. Alright, they fall under a different rule book. It's called the Police Act. When you're a police officer, you're sworn under the Police Act. And so you give up certain rights that we have as just normal citizens. And one of them is stuff like that. The department can go, yeah, you owe us, or you just have a day off, or whatever. So, red light camera. So how the red light camera is going to work is, when you are on an emergency call, even though you're allowed to go through the red light, there's a certain way to do so, and you still technically have to stop. So red light camera is similar to the photo radar, takes a picture of the license plate, and it gives the ticket to the vehicle, which then goes to the owner. So the emergency vehicle will be shown not stopping for the line at the intersection. So there's magnetic sensors in the pavement. As soon as you cross over this area here, the vehicle triggers the camera to take a picture of the vehicle crossing into the intersection. Right there, he is there, and then takes a second picture of the vehicle outside here, right? So what's gonna happen is, if the ambulance comes up here and does not stop and proceeds into the intersection, they will get a ticket. But if the ambulance comes here and stops with their emergency lights on, and then pulls through to the intersection like this, it will detect that they've taken, that the vehicle has crossed the line, but the distance of where they've gone from here to here will show that they weren't driving fast enough, they have in fact stopped. And then when you're going through the intersection, you stop here, you make sure that the ones that have the green light stop. So for here, you're stopping for this side, and then you pull through the intersection, stop in this direction, make sure that they stop, and then you go through the intersection. That's how you go through an intersection safely and not get the red light camera. If you go over 20 kilometers an hour through the intersection, even turning right, you will get a ticket. So the best way to roll through an intersection without getting the red light camera is to do it at 20 kilometers an hour. Especially if you're turning right. So if you're like me, that you just like to kind of do those rolling slow down and keep going when you can see it's clear. Don't drive faster than 20 kilometers an hour, or else you'll get one of those red light camera tickets if the intersection has one. Somebody has a question on that? Yeah. Huge. No.
For the exceeding the speed limit.
Yeah.
Did you say it's 20 kilometers over?
It doesn't say in the act, but that's defensive driving is 20 kilometers. There is, it doesn't say. Yep.
What if you're approaching from the oncoming lane?
What if what?
What if you're approaching the intersection from the oncoming lane, so it is that street? Are there also those magnetic strips?
They're everywhere. They're in all. They're in the whole intersection.
Street, okay.
Yeah. So municipal speed cameras, I've heard, and I can't verify this, that some of these cameras are set at 5 kilometers above the speed limit, the posted speed limit. So be very careful. There's a lot of these around. They're making a lot of money off them. It's basically a municipal tax. I love how that has that fucking word there, safety. It's not about safety, but it's they're all over the place. So basically what happens is this thing has a radar unit in it, and then has a lens that takes a picture here and a strobe there for at night, and they will set whatever the high limit is on there based on this posted speed limit. So some of these streets around here, they've dropped them down to 30 kilometers an hour. Like, that's slow enough, you might as well just get out and walk, right? But, so if you went through there at 40, you're probably getting a ticket. Somebody last year argued with me that said, well, my friend's mom got a ticket at 5 kilometers over, so I can't verify that, so just be very careful with these fucking things. Yielding to emergency vehicles that are stopped at an accident, so you must move over one lane, okay, move over into the other lane, if it can be done safely, and if the roadway has an additional lane. Otherwise, you're expected to slow down. If you do it too many times, it gets really fucking expensive, right? So somehow they'll look it up and say, look, if you did that in the last 5 years, now it's $1,000. That's special. And then when they're really mad at you and have had a bad day, they stick you in jail for 6 months. Because you got nothing else to do, and jail's fun, right? 3 square meals, you work out every day. They provide you with free clothing. There's lots of people to talk to. You get a roommate. Room has a toilet in it, so you don't have to go very far. If you wake up in the middle of the night, just go to the bathroom. So you just right there, just roll out of bed. Go to the hotel. Especially if you like orange.
Orange is the new black.
That's what they say. That's what they say.
How do they keep track of, like, people who don't obey this?
So you were talking about knowing this?
Like, how do they know?
Once you have an offense listed in your record, they can pull it up on the CPIC and see that you have charges on you. And so when you do this and you get pulled over, they're going to pull up your information in the terminal inside the police car, and then they can see, it's like, oh look, they did this already. Bing. They can close a highway. They have the right to close a highway. So the exemption here is that if there's like a call down that street and you have to go down the street with the ambulance, you can go down there anyways, even if it's closed. But the examples I think of when the police close highways are just outside of Barrie, towards Blue Mountain and Collingwood. Some of those areas in there, they get a lot of drifting of snow and blowing snow, and they probably will be getting that over this week. The police will regularly close a highway and say, emergency, road closed, you can't go there. So if you were to drive there in your own vehicle and you got in an accident or you slid off the road, your insurance company wouldn't cover you, and the tow truck might not even come to get you. But an ambulance, if there was a call, could go down there. The problem with that is when they do that, they haven't been plowing that road. And ambulances are not very good in the snow. Because they have dualies. So they have 4 wheels on the back, which actually makes them lose traction a lot easier than a vehicle that only has 2 wheels on the back. Because it distributes the weight of the rear end over 4 wheels, right, versus 2. So traction is shit. Do you remember the year, you probably weren't born yet, but you may have heard of it. What happens when you've been around for so fucking long? It's like you weren't even born yet. You weren't even a glint in your parents' eyes yet.
That's it, back in my day.
Yeah, back a long time ago. There was a time where we had to make a stretcher out of sticks. And when we did the lift test, we had all these branches that we had to bend over and weave together. So the winter that we had, the snowstorm that started on Thursday, and it snowed all day and all night until Sunday. And they called in the military. You heard about that one? I worked that. That was fucking hell. They say, they called the military to shovel snow. No, they didn't. They called the military because the ambulances couldn't get to calls. Okay? Because what happened is, you had a main street like this, which is the very prime first streets to get plowed. But it snowed so much that any of the streets that ran and connected off of here, it just was a berm. They never got to plow those streets. So I was working in the West End, and we would get a call for chest pains, and we come down Bathurst, been plowed, and then we hit that pile of snow and get stuck on the other side. It took us 1.5 hours to get to somebody with chest pains. That's why the military was called. Okay? There was so much freaking snow, people couldn't even go home, people couldn't get into work. That's how bad it was. Like, it was crazy. So that's why the military was called. They didn't come to shovel snow.
But they did shovel some snow.
They shoveled, you know why they shoveled snow? Because by the time they were mobilized and put together and sent here, the snowstorm had stopped, because it was Sunday. But there was enough snow still that there was problems, but we didn't have problems responding to calls because they were able to plow the side streets. But sidewalks were a mess, and so they're like, oh fuck, okay, well, we got all the guys in green, the gals in green, we might as well definitely do something, and that's what they did. Yep.
Do we have snow shovels in the ambulance?
No. Not in Toronto. You might somewhere else, but not in Toronto. Yeah.
Are the SUVs like equipped at all?
It wouldn't make that much difference, because what happened is once you plow through the other side to get that, sometimes what had been plowed again, like there, was this high. So we had to come from the middle of Bathurst and turn and smash through it. And then after you smash through it with the ambulance, there's not enough inertia for the ambulance to continue going, and then it got bogged down in the snow. The firefighters on that call carried the patient fore and after them out of the, because we were telling them, like, we're stuck, right? And then, so Toronto Fire talked to our dispatch and said, okay, they're going to bring the patient down. And I was like, yeah, that's probably a good idea, because we're dead here. Like, we can't go anywhere, and it's too far to take the stretcher through the snow. So, like, what are we gonna do? Like, one person walk there and go, yeah, look, you've got chest pains. So they brought the patient down, carried her through the snow. We got the stretcher out of the back. They went to the fire truck and got shovels and started digging out the back of the ambulance so we could, like, put the patient on the stretcher. Put her in the ambulance. And then they dug us out so we could get out onto Bathurst. We got onto Bathurst, we went north on Bathurst, wanted to pick up the eastbound 401, the ramp there, to go to North York General, and we got stuck on the on-ramp. So we're now stuck on the on-ramp. So thankfully, there was citizens in cars and a whole bunch of tow trucks that saw what happened. We had people shoveling the on-ramp in front of us to pushing and standing on the back of the ambulance to get us. It was the most incredible scene to see. And we literally had people calling us saying, well, I wouldn't have called the ambulance, but it's too unsafe for me to drive. And I'm like, What did you just fucking say? It's unsafe for you to drive. You think it's safe for us to drive? Yeah, but you're doing it all the time. I'm like, oh, like I want to, thanks. Right? But that's, yeah, so anyway. Yeah.
What happens if it's like too icy to approach patient? Now salt in that man is.
No. Nope.
Stucker's like,
We'll get to that.
Oh, okay.
We'll get to that in the health and safety. We'll get to that. I think you were first.
What would happen if your ambulance broke down, you call a tow truck? Would the tow truck bring the ambulance to the hospital to the patient? Or you call another ambulance?
They get another ambulance, and the department handles that. So if you are on the way to a call and it breaks down, you just tell them that we broke it down, we'll send another ambulance. If you're with the patient in the ambulance and the ambulance breaks down, then you try and get into a safe location, and then they'll send another ambulance and just transfer the patient from one ambulance to the other. But they handle the contract, and dispatch would call the company to come get the ambulance. And then they probably will take the ambulance away to headquarters, and then a supervisor will come to take you and all your stuff and your partner to get another ambulance. That's generally how it goes. Highway closing, so we kind of talked about a bunch of things with regards to that. This is with regards to the previous point where if the highway is closed, so normal people are not allowed to drive on it unless you are an ambulance or fire department, etc., doing your job, that you're allowed to now go down that road. The only problem, like I said, is that the road is probably closed because of snow and it's not been plowed. You'll get stuck. Old times, they used to have what was called wigwag, that you could hit a switch in there and it would flash, alternate the high beams. Police had them, we had them, I think some fire trucks had them. That's something that's not done anymore, but when it was, that had to be put in the Highway Traffic Act, so other people couldn't do it. Only emergency vehicles were allowed to have alternating flashing front, flashing lights. And so high beams on. Then there's school bus. So if the school bus is stopped with the red light flashing and the stop bar extended, and you are on a call, and it's not a divided highway as is in the picture here, you must stop. Even if you're on an emergency call with the warning lights flashing and the siren on, you must stop behind the bus until the lights are turned off and the arm is retracted and the driver signals that you can go. Okay? Because the little kids want to kill themselves. Okay? That's the way you gotta look at it. Is they'll see the ambulance, and so they're gonna come out and jump in front of the ambulance as you go by. They want to kill themselves. Especially the ones on the short bus. Something about that short bus. Is it because it's short?
Yeah.
Like,
Once they get a certain height, then they stop.
then they start saying stuff about, yeah, it's like short people, right? Short people. There's a song about that too, isn't there? You wrote something about that? Why are you so short? No, divided highways, I mean, this is a barrier that divides the two sides of the highway or median. So that, what that means is that the kids are going to exit the bus and go only in the one direction. They're not gonna cross.
Hey Dave, can that be a bonus question? Why do kids wanna kill themselves?
I should have put that on there.
Why do little kids wanna kill themselves?
What different ways do little kids wanna kill themselves? Climb up high and then jump. Jump from one area to an area that's very far away, that obviously it's not possible to reach the area by jumping. Yeah, and crashing in between, yeah.
Running into flashing.
Matches, yeah, playing hockey on the street. Anybody else need this and being all the way around? You guys over there, you got it? Yeah. Do you want to take a bit of a break?
yes.
1:30.
130. Gotcha.
Oh, I love those.
Just like decide one.
Per page. There's the brush. Maybe he's the guy that brushes underneath the tables.
Oh, yeah. Gotta get all the done now.
That's all, yeah, and the ogres.
Kids do that?
Where you
Or did that when I was a kid? That sounds fun though.
My elementary school had like the after turf, so soft.
Oh, the turf, yeah. Yeah, that turf one. I played on turf once.
No,
My
not Toronto. Other services, they might, I know Toronto did. Just have all seasons. The problem is that, it literally only ever snow tires.
Yeah, I'm paid now.
Most 4 times in the season.
Oh my God.
Sometimes it's once.
I'm paid.
So, to
On the phone, we start typing it, and then it's
snow tires means have to change all the tires and basically drive the ambulances around with snow tires on that you don't even need.
I don't have any.
Sorry, I wonder what you messages, but your laptop.
North, it's a different game. Like, it's totally different up there just because of the amount of snow
That and
and
my staff.
the amount of times that it's snowing. So I can't speak for them whether they do or not. I know some, the guy that I was friends with, he worked in Muskoka, and they had skis for the wheels on the stretcher. They would attach the skis to the stretcher because you couldn't pull the stretcher through the snow, but slide it, right?
I remember I volunteered for a Hollywood fundraiser class. Name was there. We told them that they don't have snow tires. And then they're trying to argue for more snow tires, but it seems to be like argument there, so it seems like they don't.
You know, when you talk about what happened when they called the military,
Yeah.
that was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Like, people could have died, right? And that's like right here in the city, this is the kind of thing that's happening. Well, same thing, I remember last year, what month was that?
What?
Yeah, big snowstorm?
It was
Yeah,
in
yeah.
March or something like, because I remember
Was
having to
it,
go.
was it in March or was it in January?
It was definitely 2023.
Yeah.
I think it was January, 'cause, it was snowing, it started, it was like 5 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the
Yes,
morning?
yes.
The snowstorm started, and by 7 o'clock, there was so much snow outside that it was incredible. And my wife said, I don't know if I should go to work, and I'm like, I looked out the window and I said, kinda looks like you should. She went anyways. And there was so much snow that the traffic was backed up. All she had to do was drive from out here along Lawrence to Scarborough General. And she got to just before on Lawrence, Lawrence goes to Kingston Road, there's McDonald's down here. Okay, but just south of us, not far, just directly south of here, basically. She got there, traffic wasn't moving because it was backed up, right? There was people stuck in one line. She turned around to come home. So much snow had fallen that I had to come and rescue her in the truck and pull the Jeep home with my truck. And then when we got to the house, I had to drive back and forth with the truck in 4x4 to clear enough of the snow on the road so that she could actually get up in the driveway. It was incredible. I must have been out there for 3 hours, snow blowing and shoveling and shit, because it was like, you couldn't go anywhere, right? Like, you needed 4x4. And people were getting stuck on the street all day long until they plowed it.
I remember that days that drove.
Alright, rest of the
Working class, stuck inside the road.
Get someone else
Big
to
trucks. It's like a zombie movie almost. They just like right in the corner. And
Yep.
Go one way.
I see people.
I remember that day because.
No, I you smiling like that?
Oh no. No, I don't know.
Can you talk?
I'm just watching a fat guy
No way.
doing anime pose. I don't know.
Oh, the lucky pose.
When I was a kid,
I'm just reading the comments.
storm similar to that.
Are you out of breath?
No, never mind. Don't.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll have it.
That's pretty funny.
Back in the day, so the snow was so bad, people were stuck on the DPP in the cars, running out of gas. So they actually came on the radio and said, if you
Get down.
police are authorizing you to ride your snowmobile on.
I don't know. I don't know what this is.
He looks. He's struggling.
I know.
As a kid.
How you out of breath getting on the tip? Kids are
And we drove down the street and went all up and down all night. Rescuing people. The police paid for gas, they bought them food, right? And then they came back
I
on
don't
the
care.
snowmobiles.
Comment whatever you
And they
want.
would talk about that for fucking years.
Listen to
They
this.
literally drove their snowmobiles on, like down
No,
the
it's
street of
like-
my house, down Grimley, along Edmonton, all the way to the DVP, and then up and down the DVP. rescuing people.
No.
I just take
He has the size of gear
Yeah, they
four.
were just taking people down.
Instagram comments got so bad, bro. Insane.
Bro, dude, all of Instagram is like, oh, is that a little kid? Like, I'm gonna touch you. You see those shit? Bro, it's so jokes.
I was like, I'm gonna touch you, little nigga.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can find them.
Like if we make Google Docs and just like.
Whether
Whatever. It doesn't necessarily need yeah.
on a dime.
So it doesn't have to be too long too. You need to do it right after the big season. Like 20 minutes. Kate will save us all. I don't like your beard. I think they got it at Canyon now. Oh, really? Oh, really? That's good. Oh, no way. Did his group then ever face him?
What? Debate.
Are you facing us? What's wrong? Do you have a whole little thing? Oh. No, I never noticed that too. It looks like you got a couple of crumbs there. I mean, it'll be noticeable when you put the beard. Because honestly, I'm talking, I don't have looking right there. Like a lot of people, maybe put the baby pool. Maybe put the baby pool.
Yo.
If you're really worried, I don't think you'll like worry about it too much. Be like, oh, I have a scar. Oh, so the shoot. That's why I put a hand on my face.
No way. No way.
Plus, you can't really talk very nicely. Oh, now you gotta take out the name. Eagle and smile.
Stand off.
Will we get the quiz marks later today then?
Yeah, I hope to.
What about the R4? Well, those
Pass or fail. But once I get the list from Wendy, that says that you did it. Then I just pass or fail.
What are you guys watching, bro?
We're looking at Instagram comments.
What the?
8 minutes each side. Fast. There's Lexi Cat.
Oh, I wanted to try that. I love
Incorrect. Cap.
It's like your mission to get all of Katie's cash.
That's kind of cool.
It's a mission. It's like a Christmas monster.
Very
I
American.
thought it was great. I would have it.
So, where if I still have it here? My daughter was in Canadian Tire, and
I don't know, bro.
there's Lexi
Wash
Cat
Ridge.
having her way with
4
me.
hours.
That's yeah.
I know, tramp.
What a tramp.
So she was in Canadian Tire. She wanted to buy
Cook tray and
Christmas decorations.
what is the cook tray?
She found a ceramic trailer ornament with a sign on it.
You watching, yo? Comments, bro. Oh, yo, I seen that kid. Bro, yeah. Yeah, I know. I seen that kid.
Happy meal.
So freezing, 8K.
Merry meal.
So fucked up.
No, that's Noel. How the heck do you spell your fucking name with Noel? Right? You have L's in your, yeah, I know. Noel. No, there's L's. I can see them. Sorry.
I can see them.
Neil.
Very Neil.
I think we just know what I'm saying.
Oh, it's kind of obvious. You use your power.
Oh.
Hey Dave, does that mean we can drive like a regular bus too? Or like the little mini bus thing?
Yeah, so if you're so inclined, you could get a job,
As a school bus driver?
or a tour bus. You know, the ones that, you know those buses that they, like a coach bus that drives people to the airport, or the ones that go to Niagara Falls. I know some guys that did that for a while with the company. One guy, you look at him and you wouldn't think, fluent Japanese. Like I'm talking
Yo.
really good Japanese. And so he,
Is that a guy? It's a guy.
oh yeah, like it's just whiter than night. Okay. And they would book these Japanese trips. You know,
So random.
What
What the fuck?
You know, Niagara Falls, Niagara on the Lake, downtown Toronto, and then he would just drive and speak Japanese the whole day. Yeah, you know, it's great.
You guys.
Yeah.
That's great.
I mean, most people are so opportunities to get part-time.
I think that's
Paramedics, or doing something else altogether, that honestly, by the end of the day, who wants to work for minimum wage driving a bus around?
No.
You know, I mean, if it's your thing, it's your thing. Honestly, there's lots of things to choose from, so.
Like maybe it's a thing if you're like retired, you want like something to do.
Yeah, there's that. I mean, the other piece to it though is driving. And driving these days is not like driving what it was 20, 30 years ago, where like it's just all fucking cars back in the 1800s, right?
Back in the 1800s. Back in the 1800s.
Back in the 1800s, we only had horses and a buggy. The wheels were square because they hadn't figured it out yet. Yeah.
You had an axe to cut the tree down and make your car.
Yes, yeah, you had to cut branches off of trees near the patient to make sure so you could take them in the ambulance. Yeah. There was no cover on it either.
All chocolate?
And
Hold on, I'm watching something.
There was no boots. They didn't get boots, and it was uphill both ways to go to work. You had to walk.
Batu.
Huh? Oh, thanks, man. I like this.
Oh, this one.
Oh.
Whose balls are these? Tim's?
Tim's balls. Oh no.
Tim from the morning? Saturday Night Live. You guys know that show? Saturday
Yeah,
Night Live?
I think I'm old enough, yeah.
So, on YouTube, George Schwetty drum balls.
Oh my god.
So, he was this creepy old man that came around with these drum balls, and you want to touch my balls? And put my balls in your mouth.
Whoa.
How do my balls feel in your mouth? And they went, it was like, oh my god. That was so fucking funny.
Yeah. Imagine being in the audience.
The other one is they did a stick, and what makes it funny is this is a Canadian morning show from Montreal. It's broadcast from Montreal. It's called Salut Bonjour. Okay? Saturday Night Live, someone there must have seen that show. They did a spin-off. They called it Bonjour Hello. Oh my god. I can't fucking, I had to watch the thing 8 times just to hear it because I was killing myself laughing. I had to stop it. It is so funny. You gotta watch that one too. Yeah, good now. Hello, we have a drink watch. Celine, you there? And then you hear, I'm here. Did you see a drink? I've been watching all day, I see no drink. And then there's a pause. Okay, we move on. And then they have an Asian guy play a French guy speaking French, and he fucking loses it like a Quebecer. Oh my god, it's so funny.
These Quebecers.
Quebecois.
The French cat with the nav.
Oh, that's
It's from Quebec. You lose it, the catu. Mon Dieu, tabarnak. Calice. Health and Safety Act. It's pretty new. It was only written a couple of years ago. It's the year I started high school. Yeah. 1979.
I was born then.
Divided into 10 sections. There's 32 regulations in there. This is just a single book. Mining and construction, the stack is this high if you pile them up. Because mining and construction are very dangerous, hazardous occupations. So there's this book, and then there's ones that apply directly to construction and mining. The idea of the Occupational Health and Safety Act is to protect workers, because prior to that, and you can see pictures online of countries that don't have occupational health and safety acts, and the workers are putting up scaffolding. Not only do they not have helmets on, they are wearing flip-flops, and there's no fall arrest harnesses, and they're putting up fucking scaffolding on the side of the building, or they're working up at heights. Okay, so this provincial act is meant to protect workers because people were dying in the line of duty or on the job. The Occupational Health and Safety Act is an internal responsibility system. So basically, every workplace that has to comply with this has an internal mechanism. So the school has to have an internal mechanism for dealing with occupational health and safety issues. And so there's faculty members that are certified to do occupational health and safety, and then some management people. When I became a supervisor in Toronto, we spent 2 weeks learning occupational health and safety because the city of Toronto has zero tolerance for workplace injuries, and it's a big deal there, and there's lots of fines, so you have to really know what you're doing when you're dealing with this. So this book was drilled into my head. So there's stuff there that's written in there that I still haven't memorized in there because I think they freaking branded it in my head with a laser printer or something. Okay, so the internal responsibility mechanism is in place because they don't want the Ministry of Labor coming out and investigating every single thing that goes on. So if, say, for instance, one of these things in the floor was raised up and made it a trip hazard, similar to, does anybody come in on the 4th floor across the bridge? The entrance to the bridge out there, I've already identified that and complained that that's a trip hazard. You see how it's sunken down on the one side? They have to raise that up. That's a trip hazard, right? And I've been on them for months, right? It's slow, but it's an internal mechanism. So if I complain to the Ministry of Labor, they would want to know what the internal health and safety committee did about it and let them resolve it first. But if I fell and broke my arm, that would be a different story. So that's next, right after Christmas. In the new year, it's my New Year's resolution. Fall on the bridge, break my arm.
How old are you?
Huh?
How old are you?
How old am I? He wants to know how old I am.
Oh,
Are you older, huh?
SMR?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
59.
I thought he was asking.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Hold your head.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'll make you do it in the cold.
You know what I have gold too?
In the cold, yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be January, right?
Oh, shucks.
Be some snow. Somebody's already fallen on that bridge, right? A few years ago, U of T does the maintenance up there because they own the top part of the property. So the bridge is theirs for snow and ice removal, and so is the parking lot and all of there. They ran out of salt. It was one of those years, there was a shortage of salt in the system, and they ran out of salt. They didn't salt the bridge. Somebody fell on the bridge and broke their arm. And they were faculty coming to work. So then I went to them and I said, I hear somebody fell on the bridge. And they went, yeah, it's terrible. I'm like, what? They broke their arm. And I went, oh, they broke their arm? I'm like, oh my goodness. So what did the Ministry of Labor say when you called them? And they went, what? I'm like, broken arm, critical injury, you have to call the Ministry of Labor. And I walked away. Then it was like, holy shit. And the other one, I know that they didn't call the Ministry of Labor. When I asked that question, I already knew the answer. I knew they didn't call the Ministry of Labor because if the Ministry of Labor came here, they would post orders. We're going to talk about that, but. So outlines legal duties and of both workplace parties, so the employer and the employee, the supervisor and the worker. And then sets out penalties for non-compliance. So if you don't do what it says in here, you can go to jail, you can face a big, huge fine, personal fine, and the Ministry of Labor can give out tickets. Okay, so Ministry of Labor inspectors are provincial offences officers. All right, so if you don't wear your safety boots in an area you're supposed to wear your safety boots, $195. So it provides the regulations for all industrial establishments. The word industrial establishments means this place as well. It doesn't mean it just applies to factories or where there's construction or manufacturing. They use those words just like for whatever, but it's it applies all over the place. It gives what involves a critical injury, so it gives the definitions, like I've already mentioned in my story. There's obviously an index, and there's an index to the industrial regulations, and the regulations affecting the Act, and any regulations made under the Act gives a listing of the administrative labor field offices. So it's laid out in such a way that you can go in there and reference the different areas, like what are your responsibilities, what are the supervisor's responsibilities, who's a competent person, what are the designated substances or the dirty dozen, what is a critical injury, on and on. How does a work refusal or stop work order happen? It's all listed in there. So in the definition section, it talks about an owner, which includes trustee, receiver, mortgagee in possession of, tenant, lessee, or occupant of any lands or premises to be used as a workplace, and a person who acts on behalf of the owner and or his agent is considered the owner. An employer is anybody who employs one or more workers or contracts the work of services of one or more workers. So a good example of this is you own a house and you bring in a company to trim the trees on your property. You are the owner of the house. You've contracted the work of the company to come in and trim your trees. If one of the workers falls out of the tree because they didn't wear fall arrest or harness, you could be liable. Okay? So if people are going to do work on my property, they have to comply with the Health and Safety Act, or I will tell them to stop work. So I'm watching them, what they're doing, and if I see them violating the Health and Safety Act, I go out and I warn them. A lot of people don't know that. That can happen. Supervisor is anybody who has charge over a workplace and has authority over a worker. Okay? Under that, it talks about, it won't be on the slide here, but it says a supervisor has to be a competent person. A competent person is somebody who is familiar with the workplace, the process of work, and the hazards inherent in the workplace and during the process of the work itself. So you have to be a supervisor, as a paramedic supervisor, you have to have some experience to be a paramedic supervisor, because you have to be able to look at patient care and the process of what they're doing to understand what might cause a hazard and may hurt somebody. You guys couldn't do it because you haven't been doing the job long enough to be able to look at something and go, stop doing that, that's unsafe. Okay? There's something called lead hands. In York, they actually have a position called lead paramedic. You're not really a supervisor, but you can be liable under the occupational health and safety just the same as a supervisor. Lead hands are considered people that have charge of the process of work or other workers, which includes people like preceptors and clinical supervisors. So if you're ever in a situation where you're asked to do some work like this, once you're out there and working for a while, you have to be aware that you can be given a ticket and fined as a supervisor being a lead hand. So if you are precepting a student and the student is doing something and you don't stop them, or the student comes in without PPE on, you could be liable as well. So you need to understand that that's the case. In the city of Toronto a few years ago, the roads and roads department, so snow removal, they were doing, when it snows late in the winter, the sidewalks get that big pile of snow on it, and so they'll come along and they'll plow all the snow off the sidewalk onto the road, and then they have this thing that picks up the snow, fires it into a dump truck, and they take it away. They were doing that, and there was some debris in the snow. Somebody threw some metal or maybe a shopping cart got in there, and it got caught in the auger on the end of the thing that kind of makes the snow go in so it can shoot it into the truck. And the lead hand didn't stop the other worker from going over there. The guy put his arm in there and caught him. So that guy was actually charged as a supervisor by the Ministry of Labor. A worker is somebody who's paid to perform work or supply services for monetary compensation. So it doesn't actually apply to you. There's a student area in there, and basically you don't necessarily fall under the Occupational Health and Safety Act under the definitions here specifically, but there is an exemption for somebody that's out there doing workplace training, and we have to send in special documentation to the department that you are placed with so that you're covered by comp and you have to still abide by the regulations in here. So, as I said, they like to call everything an industrial establishment, but that includes office, building, shop, or any land, building, or structures appertaining thereto. So, as that would apply to you as a paramedic, would be any of your stations, your headquarters, okay? And while you don't fall under the individual health and safety pieces of, say, a hospital, right? You still have to abide by the act when you're in there. So the Occupational Health and Safety Act applies anywhere that you may be working. Okay, so it could be in somebody's house. You still have to have your PPE that's required, etc. There's another definition in there, prescribed. So prescribed means that something has to be done and done in a certain way. So if the example would be your PPE. If you guys go for mask fit testing, so the prescribed PPE is you have to wear this kind of mask, and there's a certain way of putting it on and taking it off, like Augusto taught you in week 1. Same with the gowns, same with the safety glasses, same with the gloves. You have to put them on and take them off in a prescribed manner and wear the mask or the PPE in the prescribed manner. Types of workplace hazards. The first two up here, big ones, repetitive strain. Musculoskeletal disorders are a big problem for paramedics, but in general, if you're doing a repetitive job, working on an assembly line, and you keep doing the same movement over and over again, right? Or you spend day after day just sitting there typing on a computer, you could get a repetitive strain injury on your wrist, your arms, your shoulders, your back, whatever. The next one down is the slip, trip, and fall. So for different reasons, that's why we've got to be careful of trip hazards in the workplace, because we don't want people to slip, trip, or fall at work and get injured. Falling can also be a fall from height. So there's a specific legislation with regards to working at heights. A few years ago, I was actually working, I was on response in the East End. It was just before Christmas. There was, on Islington Avenue, there was an apartment building that was having some brickwork done on it, and several workers were on work platforms, swing stages they call them. So that's those platforms that they come down with 2 ropes on it, and it broke and a whole bunch of them fell off there and died because they overloaded the platforms, and the platforms were not up to standard, and they did not have fall arresting harnesses on. So because a bunch of them died, there was an inquest, and the Ministry of Labor said any time people are working at height, even if you have to go on a ladder to the top of the screen here, you have to have working at heights training, because people falling, you can be badly injured or hurt, killed. So that's what I think. Working near motorized vehicles and equipment, or using and operating machinery. Machinery could be construction equipment, or it could just be an assembly line or a process or something. Something could grab your clothing, your long hair, whatever. You could be injured. In our case, working on a roadway or just being around the ambulances and other vehicles that are moving around, going on a call, there's vehicles that are moving. You may be working on the 401, it's dangerous, it's hazardous. The last one, was the next one, noise. What? So loud noises like the siren. The siren has enough decibels in it to make you have permanent hearing loss after 15 seconds of standing in front of it unprotected. Back in the day, in the 1800s, The siren, they used to mount it on the roof of the ambulance. They now put it on the bumper. There's a fucking reason for that. Okay? So 15 seconds of the siren running with it on the roof is enough to make you have permanent hearing damage. So there's a lot of us out there that worked, that had them up there, that now have ringing in their ears or some hearing loss. And I already had my hearing tested last year, and they say, yeah, you've got definitely hearing loss. What? He keeps talking to me, I can't hear him. Substance exposure. So sometimes there's things in the workplace that you could get exposed to. It could be as a result of a process of the work or something undesirable. So as a paramedic, that could be body fluid, could be blood, it could be saliva, it could be something that is droplet-borne, so COVID or SARS comes out in droplets when people sneeze and cough and whatnot. So we have to consider substance exposure. And then the last one, workplace violence. So there was an incident in, I believe it was London. There was a nurse and a doctor having a relationship, and the relationship broke down. The nurse decided that they didn't want to see the doctor anymore, but the doctor decided that they still wanted to keep seeing them. It kind of escalated to the point where the nurse reported the doctor to hospital, saying, listen, this fucking guy won't go away, he keeps coming around, now he's threatening me, blah, blah, blah. They did nothing because it was a doctor. He killed her.
Oh, shit.
Whoa.
That escalated quickly. In the hospital?
Somewhere else.
Oh.
Okay?
That's not cool.
So the government found out that that was the case and said the employer knew that this is what was going on and failed to act and set up a safety plan. So now, Bill 168, if a student comes to me and says, my boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, it will wait for me and won't in the parking lot, we have to set up a safety plan for you. So we could get security to come and escort you off the property out to your car and make sure that you're safe. You could even call them to come and meet you out there. Like, you know, we have to take it seriously. So that's the newest one, and that's the reason why that's there. Substance exposure, we try to remove the substance from the workplace if possible, or if we cannot remove it, we try to minimize exposure or prevent exposure by using PPE. So some things you just can't stop being in the workplace. Like the shit is part of the process of the work. So you think, if you know where Hamilton is, Hamilton stinks. Hamilton has a permanent a gray cloud of dust hanging over it. The sun never shines in Hamilton. Because of that, when it rains, the rain is dirty. Did I tell you it stinks there? Right. So Hamilton stinks, and it's full of one-way streets. Fucking, I hate Hamilton. But it's got that steel plant that you can see when you're on the QEW, just in the bridge you come over Burlington Skyway, just the other side of that, you see. So that in there, that's a smelting, right? And they're processing metal in there. And so there's a lot of toxic fumes and coke oven stuff. You'll see that listed in the designated substances that they can't do anything about. So you have to wear a certain PPE, and only certain trained individuals are allowed to be in the area for that reason. So there's different ways of controlling substances. The first one is to just remove it from the environment altogether. These are the designated substances. They're called the dirty dozen because they're all dirty, and there's 12. See, I said it right there. You thought I was making it up. Coke oven emissions, right? Who knew Coke was made in a fucking oven? I thought it was a pot that was made in a thing. They put gas and some sugar, water, and there you have Coca-Cola. Asbestos is on there twice. Asbestos is on there twice because sometimes it's in a building, but there's somewhere else that asbestos comes from. Asbestos is not naturally occurring, but it is considered something that is naturally in the environment. Does anybody know why? There's a parts per million amount of asbestos out there right now.
Pollution?
Close. more
Nuclear
specific,
bombs.
huh?
Bonds? Like
No
nuclear
bombs, no, not bombs. Stick with pollution. What is it that's out there that pollutes?
Car emissions.
Not car emissions, but something from cars. Brake pads.
What's that?
The brake pads. So the brake pads on the cars causes a certain amount, small amount, it's a tolerable amount. But if you look at it, asbestos naturally occurring out there in the environment, and I say naturally, not that it's natural, but you know what I mean. There's a parts per million tolerance for it. Asbestos, if it's in a building, has to be removed or sealed up so that you cannot access it or break it. It's when it starts to come apart and crumble that it's a problem, right? Because asbestos is very much like fiberglass, and the asbestos goes in your lungs and it stays in your lungs and you can't get it out, and it causes, of all things, a thing called asbestosis. I know. I know. It's one of those rhymy, poetic, deadly diseases. WHMIS. WHMIS is something that you need to do. Stands for Workplace Hazardous Information Sheet. Basically, all workplaces have to have them. All the things that they use in the workplace, cleaning solvents and detergents, have to be listed in the MSDS. So, for example, I cannot bring into the workplace here bug spray, right? So even if there was ants at my desk, I am not allowed to bring in here bug spray because it's not allowed in here under WHMIS. All workplaces have them. There's a standardized base level thing, the way it works, and then it goes up from there. You guys have to do it before you go into placements, and basically it's how the different hazardous substances are classed, and then how to access a material safety data sheet in case someone gets exposed to something or other that's in the workplace. As a paramedic, the MSDS, the sheets are important for you to know about. If you do a call in an industrial establishment, a factory, or somewhere that they're processing something, and someone gets exposed to a substance, you can ask for the MSDS, and they'll bring it out and it'll tell you what to do with them. All right? The substance needs to be removed by using this, or you need to worry about respiratory precautions. Whatever the case is, it will tell you. So there's a work refusal section in the Occupational Health and Safety Act. So if I'm working in a factory and I'm supposed to be working over at a machinery doing some particular thing, and the safety guard on the machine is broken, and my arm could get chopped off if I'm doing my work because the safety bar is not there, I can refuse to work on that machine. And then the employer, when I refuse, has to come and investigate with a certified occupational health and safety member. So a worker, co-worker of mine and the employer will come and investigate, see if they can resolve it. And if they can't fix the machine or have it fixed immediately, I don't lose any pay. I go to a safe location and they may assign me some other work, right? That's actually how it's supposed to work. So if you know something is dangerous, you can refuse to do it. And you're not supposed to do any reprisals against you. They can't threaten to suspend you, fire you, transfer, or whatever, okay? So in that section, it tells you how you can refuse to do the work. So what has to be going on. Outlines the procedure and how you identify the dangerous circumstances, and then what a work stoppage kind of looks like. Okay, so if you as the worker believe that any equipment, machine, device, or thing that the worker is likely to endanger themselves or another person, a physical condition, or that there's a contravention of the act, they can do a refusal to work on the equipment or to perform the work. You cannot refuse if the danger is inherent to your work. So you work in the smelting plant and you don't want to handle the thing that has the big molten metal in it, that's your job. All right? You cannot refuse if it would directly harm or put someone else's health and safety in jeopardy. So that's where it starts to apply to us. So you have limited rights of refusal as a paramedic. So the example is, back to the snow. There's been a snowstorm, and the house the patient is in, the stairs and the pathway are covered in ice. The postie, the person who delivers the mail, can refuse to deliver the mail if there's ice on the pathway or ice on the steps, okay? But we have to go in. If they're inside and they're sick, we have to go in. So you have to find some way to mitigate the ice that's outside and get into the house. So you cannot just say, we can't go in, there's ice on the pathway, there's ice on the steps, we're not going in, buy and leave. You have to get into the house. So in cases where I've been, the fire department will come, and those guys are great. They have been known to shovel snow so that we can get the stretcher in. They have sand in the fire truck. They may find that the patient or the neighbors will have salt, and they salt it and try to break up the ice as much as they can so that we can get in and out safely. So there's ways of dealing with it. But you still have to go in. The other example is you go to the house and the front porch has wooden steps on it that look like they'll break if you stand on them. You can't refuse to go in. You have to go in anyways. Just hope that they don't break when you stand on them. They'll see you coming and they'll snap before you get there. It's like, fuck, it's him. So they can't dismiss, threaten to dismiss, suspend, or otherwise threaten any penalty or intimidate or coerce you because you made a refusal. That's not to say that they won't, but they're not supposed to. Ministry of Labor inspector has the right to enter any workplace at any time to inspect under occupational health and safety. If it looks like there's going to be any prosecution going on, they have to have a warrant, especially if they're taking evidence away, because that's the way you control the process of evidence. But they're allowed to take samples and conduct tests or require the employer to do so. Make inquiries of any person on the workplace, require equipment and processes be operated so that they can see that safety equipment works, etc. Require the production, meaning that you produce them, you show them the records of training that has been done in the workplace for the workers. They can take records and objects from the workplace. They can stop people from using machinery. They can put a stop work order. They can shut down a construction site. They can order that no one goes in and accesses an area, and then they can issue tickets. You have the right to appeal. You probably won't win. They can lay charges retrospectively up to a year later. So an example of the charges being laid retrospectively, Ministry of Labor inspector saw on the news some paramedics doing a call on the highway out towards Windsor, and saw that they were not wearing high-vis vests. The next morning, the Ministry of Labor inspector showed up at the headquarters of the Windsor Ambulance Service and wrote everybody tickets because they did not have their high-vis vests on. So that meant the two paramedics that were on the call got tickets, their supervisor got a ticket, and so did the chief of the department, which doesn't go over well when senior management starts getting these provincial offenses tickets. So that's what happened. And the last one is the best one, right? Not like everything else in the courts. In occupational health and safety, you are guilty until you prove yourself innocent. So, like I said, the orders can be appealed. Good luck. Every person who contravenes or fails to comply with the act is guilty, and upon conviction, you could pay a $25,000 fine, and if they're having a really bad day, they can put you in jail for up to a year. Again, that's a 1-year vacation, all expenses, all inclusive, right? Because when you're in jail, it's like being in a hotel that has bars on it, right? And orange is a nice color. Yeah. And the Ministry of Labor inspectors, generally speaking, when they enter a workplace and do an inspection, or if they've shown up, they will issue orders, especially if they have know that there is a safety deficiency or there's a problem, they will issue orders. There's 3 types of orders here. The one is the stop work. So that usually happens on a construction site where something is unsafe and they found something there. They'll stop work until they can fix the problem. The other one is a forthwith order that you have to do something right now or you must shut down. So it has to be fixed right now. And then the last one, which is the more common one, is something that they have to fix, but they have, maybe 30 days or 2 weeks or what have you. And as I said, they can issue tickets under the Provincial Offences Act, and there they are right there. The provincial set fines for not wearing your helmet. So any of these, if you have to have these on because they're required based on where you're doing your call, then you'll get 1 ticket for each of the violations. So just in general, no safety footwear, it's $195. Okay, and then they add a 30% victim services charge on top of that. Victim services charge is added to every single set fine in the province of Ontario. So even if you get a speeding ticket, it is got a victim services charge. Victim services charge is there to support something called victim services. Hence the name. Victim services is where you get an instance where a family's been displaced as a result of a house fire, and it gives them the opportunity to provide some clothing, maybe some food and some shelter for the family until they can get their shit together because they're out of their house. Or if someone's a victim of spousal abuse, it allows the police to relocate someone to a shelter and their kids so that they can remain safe. But that stuff has to be paid for, and that's where it comes from. So you can add those up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right there. What's that? Over $1,000 worth of tickets just right there if you're stupid. They've done it, and they've done it to firefighters. They've done it to paramedics, and the Ministry of Labor is out there watching you guys all the time. There was a team of 18 hired a few years ago just to blitz emergency services because they knew that you were violating the Health and Safety Act. Critical injury places life in jeopardy. Pay attention to the subjectivity in these definitions. Produces unconsciousness. Well, what do you mean produces unconsciousness? Do you mean like I didn't eat my lunch and then I felt woozy and passed out? Or I got hit in the head because something fell on my head and went unconscious? Well, same thing. Substantial loss of blood. What is substantial? I cut myself shaving, or my leg got cut off and almost all my blood is out of my body. What's a substantial loss of blood? It's subjective. Involves fracture of leg, arm, but not finger or toe, unless it's multiple fingies and toesies. Involves amputation of leg, arm, hand, foot, but not finger or toe, unless it's multiple. Causes burn to a major portion of the body. Causes loss of sight in an eye. I see. 7, critical injuries. Ministry of Labor has to be called to investigate anytime you get one of these. Absolutely, for sure. There is a fine just for not calling them. Duties. You shall work in compliance with the Act. Wear your PPE and equipment and clothing as required by the employer. Report any deficiencies or defective equipment, and report any others that are not following the Act. It's about everyone following the Act so everyone is safe, because if someone else doesn't follow the Act, you may be hurt. Workers shall not remove or make ineffective any protective devices. So if there's a fall arresting thing, you cannot remove it. I like this sentence here. Engage in any prank, contest, feat of strength, unnecessary running, or rough and boisterous conduct. Unlike Persephone, you're in trouble, man. Boisterous conduct. The kid can't stop laughing. The this morning, I'm like, can I have some of what she's having? Do you agree with me? She's like, laughs all the time. I don't know what, she just like, she'll burst into laughter. And I'm telling jokes, and she's laughing, and other people are like looking at her like, what's the matter with her? I'm like, she's laughing, it's funny. Old, you have to be nice to me.
I'll laugh at your jokes.
Okay, that you do. That is true. I agree with you on that.
I get
Laugh
that.
more.
I get that typed up stuff in the classroom.
You get an additional percent.
Oh.
Now you ask. Now you ask. He came to me one day and said, hey, Dave, listen, man. You know, I like to participate in classes. Your jokes are funny. Is there any kind of some sort of a mutual agreement we could come to, work something out that works for you and works for me? And I'm like, yeah, as a matter of fact, there is, right? But that's why you guys didn't get that offer, because you didn't ask for it. To not operate any equipment in any way that may endanger another worker. You have the rights. The right to know, the right to participate, the right to refuse work that is unsafe, and the right to sing the blues. Better, see? 2%.
Oh.
Dealing with a hazard. Remove it. Get it out of the workplace. That's why we don't have bug spray in the college. We just allow the bugs to keep coming in here. If you see bugs in here, you go, witness. Control it. So do things to stop the hazard from being a problem. Establish procedures for the worker. So that involves wearing the PPE or handling the stuff in a certain way or limiting exposure, whatever the case is. And the last one is about the PPE. Okay, so the PPE that you've been provided is because they're trying to deal with hazards that may be in the workplace. Obviously, COVID is really kind of thrown a wrench into how much PPE is a thing as paramedics, but that's the way it goes. I lived through fucking SARS. SARS was special because they came out one night and said, anybody who's been in the Scarborough Grace Hospital emergency department has to stay home and lock down. And we were like, anybody? Because the entire northeast district of the city, so Yonge Street to Eglinton, all the way out here to the Rouge, has been in the Grace. And they said, yep. So 1/4 of the city paramedics had to go home that night. I was the supervisor, and I had to go home too. It was fucking chaos. Lost every ambulance just because we set foot in Scarborough Grace.
He's got big blankets.
So after that happened, neighbors, if they they were walking on this sidewalk here, coming this way, if they saw me outside in front of the house, they'd cross the road and go the other side. So this would be me. Hi. Yeah, hi. Hi. Yeah, I see you crossing the street there. Yeah, fuck me too. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Just remember you did that the next time you call 911. I was the northeast supervisor for the first patient that was taken into Scarborough Grace. So that crew that took that, so it was the son of the lady that died at home. So the mother died at home on the Monday. He went into the hospital with SARS, same kind of thing. Really. They called COVID SARS too, right? And then they went, oh no, wait a second, we can't call it that, we gotta call it something else. So he contracted SARS from his mom. The crew showed up at the house for somebody short of breath. His sister came to the door, said, don't come in, said to the paramedics and the fire, don't come in. This thing, put on a mask. The only masks that were available were those kind of masks in the ambulance, and it was a one box in the ambulance that just happened to be in there. No one was mask fit tested, okay? They put on those masks, they didn't get SARS, okay? They said, we want to see a supervisor, right? So I had to go up there. They're like, we don't know what to do. And I was like, okay, we'll fill out an exposure report. Let's find out what it is. You guys stay out here. Don't even clean the ambulance. Just stay out here in a safe area, and we'll work on it. I go into the emerge, and you'll see this happen to you. They know that you're standing there wanting to talk to them, but they purposely fucking ignore you. And they stand there and they talk and they talk and they talk, and you're fucking right there. And they know you're right there. So anyways, I just fucking stand there and I wait. And then finally, I outwait them, but they do the, can we help you? I'm like, yeah, I just soiled myself. So listen, so I'm here about the patient. Everything's fine. You just tell them everything's fine and to clean their ambulance using normal procedures and everything's fine. That was infection control. Everything's fine. Oh, well, you guys know the history now about SARS, right? Everything's fucking fine, huh? So David goes, oh, thank you. Yep, went right outside to the phone. Give me one desk. Call the on-duty manager, because I knew, I could feel it. It's those instincts that you get when you've been on the job for a while. So they get the on-duty manager, and then I called another supervisor. So basically what we ended up doing was isolating the crew, and they wanted to transfer that guy that had SARS downtown, and we're like, we're calling CPRN. No, you're not. And the manager's like, try and stop me. And that's what they did. But Scarborough Grace was ground zero for SARS. And they spread it all over the city because everything's fine. And you know what they did? They would put patients that had this thing in an area that they were separated by fucking curtains. Okay? So when Scarborough Grace goes, oh yeah, you know, we were there during SARS, it's like, yeah, you fucking started it, so yeah, I guess you would. Like, I guess so, right? It'd be like the arsonist was the first on scene for the fire, right? So SARS story goes on. So months later, we've done SARS 1 and SARS 2, which was terrific, right? 2003, I just moved out here, right? And had to friggin' self-isolate. Couldn't even go to the Stones concert, fuckers. Right? Right then, bang. The Stones are coming, fucking bang. You're isolating again. Huh? So I'm working on the weekend. I'm working on a day shift on a C shift. I come in at 10 o'clock. As soon as I'm coming in the door, the phone is ringing, it's dispatch. There's a paramedic that's off duty that's booked into Scarborough Grace with SARS symptoms. Can you go up there and check on this guy? I'm like, okay. So again, I go up to Scarborough Grace. I get to Scarborough Grace. I see the charge nurse, and I don't want to defame Paulette in any way, but she's a Quebecois, and she was a bit of a like it remind you know when you go to the sand and the beach, it kind of reminds with that. Okay. I say, hey, I know why you're here. Okay. He's fine. There's nothing wrong with him. It's just the flu. Okay, sorry. So by this time, they have these reverse isolation rooms. So he's in room 3. So room 3 had the door with a window open, or a window in it, and there was a blind on the other side. The blind was up. So I went to the door, and I could see him on the stretcher inside, and I couldn't make myself open the door. I'm like, so he's inside, sees me outside, he goes, no, they're discharging me, I can see it. No, I'm fine, just go. I'm like, you're good, okay? So I left, I walked outside. I'm like, well, that was really bad of you to do that. Like, you could have gone in the room, right? He had fucking SARS. He had SARS. I would have caught SARS if I had opened that door. If I had gone in that room to ask him how he was, I would have got SARS. I came that close. That close. Okay? There's a commercial for Volkswagen. Guy's at his front door, putting the key in the thing, and these two guys in lab coats grab him and pull him back. And this big box falls down where he was standing. He's going, what the fuck was that? It's the two Volkswagen guys. And say, that's what that was like. The Volkswagen guys were there, moving away. Had a few close calls. In here, it was good. Almost got shot on the night.
Oh, can we hear that story?
3957 Lawrence Avenue, right down here, just east, sort of west of Kingston Road, down Lawrence. On the south side, there's an apartment building that faces this way. So Lawrence goes like this. There's the bridge, there's a ravine, and there's other buildings along here and some townhouses. We're called to that building 3 o'clock in the morning for an old lady who's fallen in an apartment and broken her hip. We didn't even have portable radios back then. Or the radios they gave us, they were shit. They didn't really work, so we didn't care. Right? Nobody had cell phones. So, the building like this. I'll use the pen. Apartment building, front entrance, driveway, just down here, the little building here. Then you go down to go to the underground parking here. Park the ambulance there. We're walking here. As soon as we get an eyesight here, there's a drug deal going on right there. We startle them, they startle us. The fucking guns come out, they point them at us. We fucking jump through the door and go inside. We're like, holy fuck. I'm not a cop. No one's coming. It's a fractured hip. We can't call anybody. There's no radio. There's no cell phones. So my partner's like, what do we fucking do? I'm like, fucking stretcher's out there. So I'm like, odds are they're gone. Okay? Playing the odds, they're gone. We scared them, they scared us, they're gone. They probably ran inside this building and they've gone away. I said, how about you take a look and see if it's all right for me to come and help you get the stretcher. Rock, paper, scissors. So I fucking go out and I look, sure enough, they're gone. Right? And it's like, okay, now let's go get the lady with the fractured hip. What are we gonna do? Call the police and say there was guys there doing a drug deal? Like, where are they gonna find them, right? They're fucking long gone, right? Yeah.
Thanks for a nice story.
Yeah, 3 o'clock in the morning. One of our last night shifts and all right, back to this. Signal person. So remember in week 1, when we talked about some cases and instances and things that you might encounter as a paramedic, we talked about some things that will apply to the rest of this course. There was the example of you're in the ambulance and you pull in and the garage doors open and your partner backs the ambulance in. Well, this is that answer to that one. You have to have a signal person. So anytime that ambulance is being reversed into the garage or into a driveway, someone has to be out there watching so you don't run anybody over. It's covered under the Occupational Health and Safety Act, so if you don't use a signal person, you can be violating the Occupational Health and Safety Act. So when you run over the little brat that runs out behind the ambulance, even though the parents don't like the kid anymore because it's such a little brat, And as I said, kids, they just want to kill themselves, and this is their opportunity for this little brat to kill himself. You will be in trouble, okay? So, operator of a vehicle, machinery, device, or thing that does not have a full view of the intended travel path of the machinery, device, or thing. The Act actually says that, it doesn't say vehicle. We changed it because machinery, device, or thing was a little bit wordy. It means vehicle. The vehicle shall only be operated as directed by the signaller, who is a competent person. So you can't find an idiot to do it, which is kind of hard these days to find people that are. But anyways, we'll go there. And then that person needs to stand in full view of the operator, so it means standing where the driver can see you in the rearview mirror, standing so that you can see in such an the intended path of the vehicle, which means the back rear corner of the ambulance, and that you can avoid getting run over by your partner who still doesn't know how to drive, and you can jump out of the way at the last second if it does start to happen. If you're required to wear PPE, then you shall wear it as instructed and trained, and so you have done that here, and you will do it again when you get hired, and then they can tell you when you have to wear PPE. And as it works now, the service will say you have to wear it on every patient encounter, and then sometimes they will even say you have to wear it all day, all shift. Procedures mask, so it would be varying degrees, so you might go with the mask, black one with that, or you could go with that if there's patient care and you've got somebody that's sorry about COVID symptoms. Same with helmets, eyewear, and foot. Okay, so safety boots, safety eyeglasses, and helmets shall be worn as required. High vis is also in there. I mean, back in the 1800s, we only used to wear dark blue, and some of the stuff didn't even have reflective striping on it. So they changed that to anytime you're on an active call or roadway, you have to have 360-degree coverage, distinct colors versus the background, so no dark colors, it's only that highlighter yellow. And a lot of services have just adopted that that's the uniform you will wear at all times, regardless of where you're doing the call, because it's easier to have you comply with the Health and Safety Act when it's all in a permanent uniform than to say, put on a safety vest and take off a safety vest and all that nonsense. Class 3 is the level of protection you need, and this is the definition of what Class 3 looks like in terms of the striping that goes on the parka around your arms and around your legs, and the X on the back, because you have to have an X on your back because that's the target the cars will come after.
We did it.
You did it.
That's your last one. Yay! Better. Is there any questions? Like, they got upset with me this morning. There was a lot of crying and gnashing of the teeth that I can't believe you haven't talked one thing about the debates next week. And I'm like, what do you want me to say? Do you want to debate the debate? Do you want to argue about the argument? Like, what do you want me to say about it? So, I'm offering you, if there's any questions or things that you guys are struggling with in your groups, please do. If not,
Well, it's 8 minutes each, right?
it works out to a total of 8 minutes each for a total of 16 minutes for the entire debate question to go through the process. I did it that way because when I was planning it, I had to plan for up to 55 students in the class in each section because they were going to increase the enrollment requirement. So I was kind of planning to have a lot of people. And then I structured each group so that the group had a maximum number of people in it, and I even made these questions to divide up the groups enough to get everybody an opportunity. The time was the time, so we only have 3 hours, so I worked it out how what's the maximum I can go on each side to allow the most amount of time for 8 topics. That's the only reason. With the numbers that we now have in the room, we probably have a lot more latitude, okay? There's still the same number of topics though, so it will still take roughly the same amount of time. I want to limit the time for each group's debating arguments because it does a couple of things. The first one is it forces you to organize and synthesize a concise and succinct answer and response. You can't just go on and hope that you hit all the points, which is one of the most popular things that people will do when they're trying to explain something. They just keep going around and around and around and around and around and around, and then at some point you've got most of the air, right? This, you have to know what you're talking about. So put some pressure on it. It limits a lot of sidebar nonsense because we can control it and shut it down with the time, right? Because you cannot keep going, right, beyond your time. It was just something that was necessary to do. So basically what's going to happen is I've revised the order that how people will speak in the groups because there was wasn't necessarily a mistake, it just wasn't explained well or shown up well on there. So somebody in the morning group kind of pointed it out and said, we don't understand what that means, and I looked at it and I'm like, I can see why, because I combined in my mind two things together. So it has been changed. The conclusion and the summation, it goes 2 minutes and then 1 minute for a total of 3 minutes on each side, right? And then the rest of it, right? So the total time for both groups works out to 16 minutes, no more than 16 minutes of discussion, which basically is 8 minutes for the affirmative and 8 minutes for the against.
So one side's talking 8 minutes and the other side, it's not like.
Not
2 minutes,
continuously,
2 minutes.
no, it's 2 minutes, 2 minutes of the affirmative, 2 minutes of negative, then a rebuttal, then a summary rebuttal for the other group, and then a summary rebuttal for the last group, and then conclusion, or conclusion at the end, right? So you get 2 goes at it.
Does every person in the group need to talk, or can like there be one person that's like?
That's the idea,
Yeah.
is to have everybody get an opportunity to present and speak. If you do that and you have more than, if you have 4 or more members in your group, you're gonna get docked for that. You'll lose marks. So if you have a group that only has like 2 or 3 members, because some of the groups lost people, because you know that's what happens in here, the plague comes in and sweeps out some people and lose a bunch of students. Those people would get an exemption. They probably have others that are speaking more, right? I think there's a couple of groups that may have like 2 or 3 people in them, so they're going to be speaking more. But if you have 4 or 5 people in your group and they don't all speak, you will be dinged. Yeah.
Are we allowed to bring notes?
You have to have notes. You should have notes. You should have a plan of how you're going to debate. Basically, have it organized, what you're going to say. Don't do a big essay thing, have points, right? And everybody should have access to the notes. I should be able to collect your notes afterwards and go, they didn't talk about this, why didn't you mention that? So in the future, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make you make notes and submit them for grading. I did it this time, I didn't do it this time, okay, so you'll get away with it this time, but next time I think I will. We're gonna see how this one goes to see what modifications I have to do. But I would have it laid out, what are you gonna say to introduce your topic and to state your argument? What are the possible rebuttal things that you're gonna have? And what conclusion do you wanna have? What do you think the other side is gonna say so you can respond to it? Okay?
So since we don't have to formally submit anything written, but for marking, we don't require a works cited pages for research?
Unless you're going to use citations to support your arguments during the debate, you don't have to have citations. I mean, I would just get into the habit of knowing where stuff came from because it's a good habit to have. Because if you don't develop those habits now, when it does count, because you will be writing papers in semester 3 and submitting them for marking, and you have the citation. I give citations there, and we'll be doing research. If you don't do it, you'll lose where the citation came from. Like, you will have a quote, it'll be a great quote, it'll have a great idea to it, and you won't remember where it came from. I mean, I have tricks that I can tell you how to deal with that, but somebody over here.
So we don't have to submit anything?
No, I'm gonna use the rubric I posted for marking, each person in the group, and,
Will we get dinged if we're over or under time?
you'll be warned, and then if you do it again, you'll lose one. Cool?
Cool.
Okay. See you next week.
Also, yo, I put my callus.
Ew!
Bro, did you see me falling asleep, bro?
Bro, I'm so tired.
Are you going to lab?
I might go home.
For real?
I'm sick.
Wait, I'm gonna take.
Oh, you're right. You don't wanna.
But I think my group wants to meet up first.
Bait?